use that. All right. Welcome to You Won't Hate It, where we look at life through the lens of pastors at the length of a cigar. I'm Josh.
I'm Ryan and Floyd.
I'm Floyd and Joe. We'll split it.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a joke there?
No, I was going to leave it alone.
Oh, okay.
It's
I didn't
fine.
know. I didn't know. Yeah.
Oh, just,
Floyd, by the way, is just out for this week. It's not like he's out forever. We love Floyd.
we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Let's see how this goes.
Yeah. We might need more room in frame.
Yeah.
So with one person gone, we get a little bit more.
You can
Oh, we
actually-
do.
You can actually see our
see
shoulders now.
space.
You can
yeah,
stretch.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's pretty. So it's pretty fun.
We need to have like something weird, just that's always off camera behind us, but now you can see it.
So
Like,
yeah.
that's why they
Oh,
do
yeah, you
that.
still haven't
I've been
decorated.
meaning to decorate our things. So every single week I think about it. And
First,
then
we need to
forget.
repair them.
I do. We probably should. Anyway, so I have a list of questions and thoughts, but we also have a couple things to go over.
There's a bunch on there.
Also, yeah. So we have a million things. So what do you guys? I did think we talked about this. I think last week or whatever.
2 weeks ago.
Is that we should talk about grief since you just lost your sister. So that needs to be in here somewhere.
Why don't we start with opening banter on that?
Yeah.
We got the other stuff. We'll get to Russell Brand at some point.
You want to opening banter grief?
Yeah, why not?
I mean that. Banter. I don't know why
Everybody
banter
here
is
watching
funny.
is sad right now.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
fine. It's
Yeah.
appropriate.
The
Right.
term banter to be like, oh, let's banter back and forth.
Banter
My
here
dead
is stating
sister.
what are healthy boundaries you have set as a pastor, and what are unhealthy boundaries you have set in the past and had to change.
So we'll do grief first, and we'll go to that.
Okay.
Let's do that. Let's
like
do it
it.
back and forth.
So
What in regards to grief?
Yeah,
Like
how
processing it.
I was gonna say, yeah. I was gonna say, how do you? I was gonna say that seems the best spot. Is how do you grieve? Like, what has been your experience? How about this? Let's do pastoral. How do you grieve? How do you recommend other people grieve? So, some people were talking about like grief and how they handle it, and Lisa's like, oh, they can grieve how they want. There's no right or wrong way. I'm like, well, it feels like there's some wrong ways.
there has to be, right?
It's got to be some wrong ways.
Isn't there a way to where you're like, hey, that's just unhealthy?
Yeah, it's not good for you.
Like if my grief is to lose myself in a bottle, probably bad, right? Like we wouldn't. I think a therapist would say that too.
Yes.
Like Alice in Wonderland.
And she was
yes.
being sweet and empathetic, and I was being stupid. But
Yeah.
yes, you're right. So what do you do? What do you guys do? How do you grieve, and how would you recommend people grieve? Like, I know somebody probably asked, or they're going through something, and you just offer some information about it. So what do you guys think?
Trying to think of last time I was grieving.
So this is a good spot where I realize I think I'm a little more hypocritical than I would think I am. The way I usually grieve and want to grieve is different from how I would advise somebody else.
Sure.
Because it's
grieve.
personal.
That's honest.
right?
So
let's go with you.
I very often, and obviously it depends on what level of grief we're talking about, but honestly, anytime something gets bad or like really sad and I really am like, I need to step away.
Yeah.
I'm such an extrovert and I'm always around so many people that it's, for me, I'm like, I just need to detach from humans. I need to go be alone and sit with God and a lot of solitude and a lot of quiet and a lot of contemplation. And it's funny because I would probably advise most people that that's fairly unhealthy for a long period of time. I would say a short period of time, that can be fine.
Sure.
But a long period of time. And I know that I have a tendency to fall into that for longer periods of time
Yeah.
because I'm just like, I just don't want to, like when something hurts that bad to me, I'm like, I just don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear your quips about how God is still good. I know, but I'm pissed and I don't want to hear any of those things. I just want to sit. I want to mourn. And I know there is a weird line, and I don't know where it's at, but I know that there's some sort of line that falls into depression if I don't watch out.
Sure.
Like, and so
Sure.
my advice to other people is like, hey, I know it's tough, but you need to be around people because you need to make sure you're not in that. Then I'm like, peace. So it's kind of hypocritical. I will say that. So that's just me.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about you, Schwab?
I think grief. So I'm thinking back through when like my grandfather died, and
I thought you were going to go there. I'm like, your grandfather.
yeah,
That wasn't that long ago.
It was one of the more recent ones. I think after we put my dog down, I went to go play pool for about 6 hours. But for my grandpa, it was interesting because I forced myself to go to work. I didn't take any time off. I just thought like that wouldn't be good for me, knowing isolation is healthy, but it's in comparison, probably a much more limited time for me.
Yeah,
because
right.
then I'll be like, I'm being a four. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, this is perfect. I don't need anyone. No one needs me. And
You just get lost in yourself. Yeah,
yes,
it's
and
crazy.
so I decided to go to work, and at the time, my coworkers, where I worked at the travel agency, they were aware of my grandpa's health at the time and the situation, and praying together during Christmas time, approaching him moving out to the assisted living, and so I thought like. And I remember asking my boss, like, "Hey, would this be overstepping if I sent a, hey guys, this is what happened. Like, this is where we're at." And she's like, "Yeah, they like we want to know. Like, I want to know." And so I sent a message with
Tell us it's a Christian company too.
and
does
yes,
help.
yes. And so I said, "Hey, this is what's going on. You know, he's with the Lord now. Thank you for your prayers." I sent them a couple photos of that Christmas. We got, or that holiday season, we got to talk to him, and his memory had gone, and so that was harder for me during that because it drags on, and you're helpless.
Yeah.
You just watch your hero decline, and so people were very kind in that, but processing it was more. It was more difficult while he was here because I was like already grieving him while he was alive.
Yeah.
And then once it was done, there was a relief, and the gratitude for me, it was this kind of galvanizing season because when we thought he was dying, 3 or 4 years before that, I wasn't with the family. That was before I went to rehab. So it was this weird full circle thing where I was too scared to grieve with my family when we thought he was dying 3 years ago. And then now that I'm not too scared to do that, still scary, still sucks, still eats at you throughout the day. But I'm here with them, and they're not alone in this, which means I'm not alone in this. And ultimately, Grandpa wasn't alone in this, whether he knew we were there or not. And that was like, I realized like, oh, that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'm grieving, you still have responsibilities.
Sure.
And so that for me now is kind of a, if and when grieving happens, yeah, I think I'm similar. I think what I would suggest to people would be, depending where they're at, would probably be different than how I would approach grieving.
What would you suggest?
I mean, the differences would be like, let it happen, like take some time. Like and depending, like how they're talking to me and how where their emotional state is, I think, okay, well, maybe I'll let this meeting go on a little longer than normal, just because they need some ears to hear. So, when usually for me, I'd be like, I need like a day. I just don't want to interrupt. In fact, I watched a video with Francis Chan talked about when his uncle passed away. And he left church early. He apologized to his church. He says, "Hey guys, I'm sorry. Last week I left early. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to fake it. I was very sad." And he had a whole his message was all Ecclesiastes. So it was obviously positive at the end, but it was very harrowing and kind of depressive throughout it. So for me, I didn't identify with that as much because I know it's not healthy for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to going, nope, this is it. You still have responsibility.
Yeah.
And then you've mentioned, Heidi, take an hour a day or a couple hours a day and don't do anything but just feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, acknowledging that the emotion is something that I wasn't taught. That's something I had to learn.
Yeah.
What's funny is I've never implemented that. I've thought about since she said that. That's so interesting that you reminded me of that. I'm like, I think maybe I need to implement that idea. Her advice is, she's a counselor who lost her husband, and her advice was to go throughout your day. You still have to get stuff done. Like, chances are you can't just take work off until you feel better. And so it's schedule in a time of grief. I've never done that. That's it. And I'm like, does that even work? And I'm intrigued by it.
And when do you do it? Like,
Yeah,
you
when's
try
that
to do
spot?
Yeah, when do you like, okay, now I'm ready to grieve?
Middle of the day, it's
yeah,
like, that doesn't sound good. It's like, I'm going to take my lunch break and then come back to work just
back to
all
next
messed
meeting.
up. Yeah.
It's true. I'm
It's
like,
horrible.
Every time she said, I'm like, it's good. My practical brain goes, when?
Yeah.
am I doing this?
I'd have to figure out, it would have to be like,
I think early morning or late at night.
it's funny. Mine was early morning. There's probably a time between after work, pre-dinner,
Right.
that I could fit, that I'm like, you could fit that. I don't know. Like, it's weird.
Late
Oh,
night-
turkey. Thank you, honey.
You do late night cigars. That's probably the spot to do it. Maybe that's where you start
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah. What about you? What's your thought?
Yeah,
I
because
think it's interesting because I do think personality plays big time into this because what you're looking for might not be what someone else is looking for. The universal advice I give people is don't be in a hurry to be done with it. Be like, give yourself grace. Be okay to be sad a year later, 2 years later, whatever. Just like the grief just takes whatever it does. The other advice I give is if it's really hard, get a counselor. They have grief counselors.
Yeah.
Have somebody walk through because there's stuff you don't know what. Like you get that you're sad, but sometimes you get stuck and you're like, I'm not sure why I'm this sad. And it's good to do some unresolved stuff, whatever. And so you just have somebody help you walk through it. For me personally, I don't know where this shifted, but like I'll cry more at a beer commercial than at somebody dying.
yeah.
It's just really weird. I have
Oh
more,
yeah, I know. What's funny is I've always been like that.
I don't even get it.
That's
it doesn't
been
make
my whole life.
I-
Inspiration
Yeah.
and powerful good things.
Oh, you mean like the Budweiser, the dog and the horses
Yeah.
commercials?
Yes, yes.
But the powerful, inspirational things make me far more emotional than sad. Sad things, I get angry
Yeah.
more often than not.
Yeah.
It's the like, if something is like powerful and
Brotherly.
profound.
I don't know why brotherly gets
yeah.
me
Yeah,
like
like,
nobility.
nobility. It's the heroic, the
yeah.
sacrifice
Because you
yourself
don't see it very much. That makes me more emotional even right now. Like I don't see
100%.
that much when I
Yeah.
see somebody doing just the right thing in
That's
the
funny.
hardest
Yeah.
moment. So I tend to be more emotional at like loss, like death, watching other people be sad. Their sadness makes me sad.
Yeah.
That's how I get hit. Like I
Yeah.
get like, oh man, I feel for them. And so a lot of times and depends on this other thing is what's my role in this grieving process? Am I the pastor here, even if it's my own sister in this one?
Yeah.
Like, what's my role here? And so I'll probably be more sad about the loss of my sister later on
Right.
when I just have some time to kind of let go of my responsibility, pastoring my family through it, and all that. But I think in this particular instance, one of the things that I shared was Lisa and I, my sister had just died. It was Sunday morning. We got up, it was 3 a.m. when they called me and FaceTime with my family and going through all that. And so we talked about it and we were chatting through it. And she's like, because I was talking about like, I don't really cry over this. And then I was crying. And she's like, well, then I don't get it. What are these tears? I said, for me, honestly, these are tears of joy. I said, I spent years praying and begging the Lord to save my family. And I cried at night, would cry, I'd think about it, I'd weep.
Yeah.
So when my family gave their life to Christ, my siblings, including my sister Nikki, when they gave their life to Christ, so even in this situation for me, I was just happy and relieved knowing that I'll see her again and she's gonna be with Jesus. And so like I had a very different, it's more joyful. Like I'm the youngest of 10. The likelihood is I'm going to pastor all of my family to go home with the Lord. That's going to be kind of my role. And so it's just this really different spot for me. And so I didn't cry at the funeral. I didn't cry at any of those things. So I think I just had this still sense of peace and joy. But again, later on, when I kind of let that guard down, I'm sure I'll have some sadness about it. Also, she had been fighting lung cancer for years.
Right.
I didn't expect her to die right then. I really thought she had years left. So that was more of a shock than it was like, but I also knew this was coming at some point.
Yeah.
So for grief, I think it'd just be different. If one of my kids died, I don't even know how I'd grieve. I might just be an absolute wreck.
Well, that's not.
I
don't even understand that one.
I couldn't even figure that out. If
Yeah.
Lisa died, the kids died, I love my sister, but it's not like, even
Yeah,
this
I
whole time prepping the funeral, which is very different, I was very aware, this is the nice part about doing this a lot, that we have a chance to do this a lot, is I was very aware, watch other funerals where the siblings make it about them and their sister, and I'm like, I feel it's more about the husband and the kids. Do you know what I mean? Like I've observed that. And so I was very aware to be like, hey, I really wanted to empower my nieces who are younger, but to make it about them. I said, you have a relationship with your mom I don't know.
Yeah.
And you're with her every day and you've cared for her every day. And even though she's my sister and I love her, I want this to be the funeral and the celebration of life that you want. And so even kind of going into that mode, because they're experiencing something so different than what I'm experiencing. And I can relate. I lost my mom.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, I want it to be that way. So even that was cathartic for me to kind of be like, hey, let's make it about you and where you're at. Even where they sat, making sure they sat up front.
Yeah.
It just sounds funny. We have a very big family, overbearing. They love their sister and they love her and they're with her all the time. And I'm on all the threads about her. But it's the kids. It's their mom.
Yeah.
Mom or spouse. That's so different.
Your immediate family changes, when you have kids or husband or wife.
Yeah, when Ashley's brother passed, it was like they couldn't, rightfully so, they couldn't comprehend like your life, that like your entire life dynamic is surrounded by your immediate family when you have a close family, which their family is as close as I've ever seen a family. That doesn't that version that in your head lasts this way forever. You never think. You know your parents are gonna die. You know that. It sucks no matter when it is. Even if they're very old, it still sucks. Your siblings, that's not in your head. Like I've never thought I'm gonna lose one of my siblings. Never once. That dynamic is just like, nope, gone. And I'm watching them maneuver. That is, I don't even know how to. It's funny. I was thinking this when you were talking. I'm like, I don't know if it's possible to not make yourself the center of everything when you experience any type of loss. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but like, really, I'm like, if it's an aunt or an uncle, it's like you have it and you like, this is my version. And even though you might know it's worse for her, the kids and the spouse, you're still like, but it was my sister. Like, and I wonder if it's even possible to truly be that selfless to say like, I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm not even going to like make this about me at all. If that's even humanly possible to be like, I'm not going to post videos about it and talk about how I lost my sister. You know, like, I don't know if that's even possible.
Right.
I think because we have to process it too, right?
Yeah, and you have a community, and and you don't want to do it alone. There's a mix. Like I think I did middle, like because obviously I had my own.
Sure.
But then in those moments, like we're pastors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That moment you shift
start
into
serving.
pastor
Yeah,
mode.
yeah.
You're just like even like when I prepped the service. It's fun in the sense of I got to do what I think he suggests what to do is make it more about the people sharing a memory. My friend Kathleen, who led me to Christ, is a chaplain. And so we just happened to have a conversation that week beforehand. And she says, this is how I do funerals. And I really liked what she said. She goes, I accomplished two things. She goes, I want to honor the dead and I want to give hope. And I thought that's what we're doing. But I go, just to summarize it in those two elements was really, really good because that's what I'm like. That one big middle part is the honoring.
Totally.
How does everybody share? How does everybody? And I tell you what, we had more young kids share. Like kids are like around 10, 12 years old.
Wow, really?
It was the most I've ever seen.
Great grandchildren or
It
grandchildren?
would be her grandchildren. They're my great
nieces and nephews.
Yeah. And so
I
there's
was
a
schooled
number
on that on Sunday because I was like, and his sister, like he's spent a lot of time ministering to his sister's kids, which would make them his. And I really could not figure it out.
Yeah.
And then the whole crowd told me what it was.
Yeah,
I felt
that's right.
stupid.
And so it was. So that I don't know. That part of it is too. Is like some of that stuff is just cathartic for me. Watching the kids talk. I wasn't even sure if they were going to. I think 45 minutes of just family, her grandkids, stuff like that, just sharing. And so I honestly, then it left it to me being like, all I really need to do here is share the gospel.
Yeah.
Like, I emceed it. I'm ushering them through this process.
Yeah.
And then I just got to share the gospel, and a bunch of them gave their life to Christ, which was amazing.
That's so awesome.
So yeah, that's kind of it. I'm not great at it. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't.
I have better advice than I take for myself.
Right. Yeah, I think grief. Do you guys believe in like the stages of grief, like they've been laid out?
If I experience loss, like we talked about, kids or spouse, I think you'd go through them. I think bargaining, denial. I think if I woke up and one of my like a spouse or a child is that, I think it'd be in denial.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to bargaining with God at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I think again, that level, right? That level of grief.
I think when it was taught to me, the concept was there, but we didn't really delve into it. Like each person's different and each stage could be shorter or longer.
Yeah.
And
right.
it might be more internal or external.
Yeah.
And you might be, and so for me, that was a healthy thing to understand. Like when I messaged the company and sent them photos and stuff of Grandpa, the last Christmas that he got to hold a guitar. We got him a guitar, and he had a fedora, and he was all dressed up in his German garb like he used to be. And that's what I wanted them to remember him as.
Did he have later hosen?
He had
I don't remember.
He had earlier hosen.
Yeah, or present hosen, and I remember a few people came up to me. I was eating lunch in the break room, and they said like, "Hey, I'm so sorry." Like that. I'm like, "Oh, the email about Grandpa," and I realized at the time like, this is kind of silly. I didn't, and I remember praying actually for forgiveness. Like, I didn't do this. I didn't do this so people for a pity party for people to come to me and say like, "Hey," I just wanted to honor him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
But
you
I
can't
can-
blame people. People.
no, but
People don't know how to
I
respond.
understood why people were doing that. It was very kind. And I remember Raquel, she came in and she goes like,
Welch?
"What?" She's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "What?" She's like, "What are you doing at work?" And I said, "Like I have a job,
Making money.
making bank." And she's like, "It actually rocked me." She says, "I don't know if you know how much we know you loved your grandpa, and
Like
and
you didn't do
everything."
your job. You mostly just talked about your grandpa
Right,
instead of work.
like you just wouldn't shut up about him.
Don't think you understand
And,
how little you
like,
get accomplished in a day.
Stop playing guitar. Answer the phone.
Hey, did you
And-
call anybody? Let me tell you about my grandpa.
Did you hear
Yeah.
about my grandma? He's got German outfits
Yeah.
that he wears.
And you're marching around the office, and
Future hosen. Oh, amazing.
and she's like, you need to take time. And I said, I'm here to work. She's like, the work will still be here when you get back, or someone will take care of it. That's
No one's
not
taking care of
important.
it.
And but that was something that I was like, I need to work. I need to get. And so I was leaning too much into. In fact, even though I was at work, I was kind of isolating anyway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Well, sometimes work can be a great distraction too.
Right.
Like it's not that terrible to
Right.
be like, you know what? I need to break away from the morning for a little
yeah,
bit.
it's got to be
Yeah.
a mixture, right?
So I used to. The only reason I asked the question is because I've never been a fan of when people are like, "Oh, here's the way this is gonna work. Like, here's the stages of grief," and I'm like, "I don't like that. Doesn't have to be the case." And then when I experienced grief, I remember being like, "Oh yeah, I walked through every one." And
Every one of
when I
those.
was intentional, especially, it was like, "Where am I at?" Talking to other people, then finding the like you said. It first of all, it doesn't have to be in that order.
No, it's
You
not.
can go in
Go
and
back and
out
forth, yeah.
anywhere you want. You can, and then you're like, okay, I'm no longer bargaining.
Right.
So you feel like you get all the way to the end, and then all of a sudden you're bargaining again.
Right.
Like you can
Or
go
you're-
in and
or you're
out of
angry
it.
again.
Yeah.
You've come to accept it, but now you're furious.
And I went, oh my gosh, they nailed it. Like
Yeah.
whoever I can't remember the guy's name. I looked it up when I was in it, but I just thought like that is intriguing because that's pretty much right.
I have
His
found
name is
myself.
Dr. Stages of Grief, which is really appropriate.
Oh.
It just worked out.
I love when,
Yeah.
like Usain Bolt when people like have the same last name as their career.
I'm
yeah,
Dr.
he was
Stages
lucky.
I've
He
actually,
just- yeah.
I think bargaining specifically is one that lasts the longest, or like I've noticed inklings of it like throughout
That's the one- really?
much longer time. Yeah, like it'll be years later, and I go, man, I'd give everything I have to just share this view with my parents.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That is.
Well, you know,
because
so-
the bargaining one. I'm trying to. There's a better term, so forgive me. It's
Yeah.
the silliest one. I don't.
It is.
I don't
Right,
mean.
it's
I-
funny,
yeah.
'cause you
it's
can't
the most
bargain.
futile.
Who are you bargaining? Like
can't
God?
bargain.
Yeah.
Do you think like
Right.
it's such a fun? But we do it, and I'm like, okay. What if
Right.
you take me instead?
Yeah.
And God's like,
Like,
dude,
God's like,
what?
dude.
Like, it's so.
Play that out, man.
But we
play
do
that
it.
out.
Yeah, but seriously, you're just like, I'll do what? What if I give you more money? You know,
Right.
it's just so.
What if I
silly.
commit my life like? Well, you should commit your life to me anyway. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
it's just silly,
have
but we
nothing to
all
It
offer.
do
really
it.
is the
yeah.
weird one. So you guys, one of the things that is about a family member dying. One of the positives of that is you see family you haven't seen in forever.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've told the stories. I'm 5'9", and I say all the time, I'm a monster in my family. I'm like humongous.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm huge.
Oh, really?
And so I wish you guys could have been there because some aunts showed up from my mom's side who are the really short people. And you'd be like, this is a joke, right? They're
That's
not
so
this short.
funny.
And so it came up about how tall my mom is. I think I've told you guys she was 4'11". And my aunts came up, and they've probably shrunk over the years.
Yeah.
They go, oh, she was shorter than us, her sisters.
Crazy.
They're like, she was more like 4'9". And she was just a tiny, I mean, I'm 14, so I don't remember. You
That's
know what I mean? Like,
crazy,
She's this
yeah.
tiny little lady. And so these aunts, I mean, to hug them is I'm bending all the way down. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
to give them these hugs.
like hobbits.
They were like hobbits. I saw their feet too, very hairy. Those ladies had hairy feet. So I hadn't seen them in forever. And they're like, do you know who I am? I'm like, I don't. Like they're my mom's
Yeah.
sisters. And I
Yeah.
didn't know who they were.
That's crazy.
And so that was fascinating to just be like, I really am a monster to these people. Like
that's so
they're all
funny.
like, where did I'm the Michael Jordan of their family? Like,
That's-
what's up?
You were
Genius.
you're the baby of the family.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore. There's obviously plenty more babies, but
No, they still introduce me as the baby.
Yeah?
because there's 10. So
Yeah.
they go, and this is the baby.
did they call you Pastor Butch?
No.
Oh, I was.
They call me
wondering that.
Butchie though. Everybody calls me
Butchie.
Butchie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I just thought that was just an interesting element to see family. Like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen them.
That
in
is actually
forever.
really funny.
One of the other things that she said that was interesting. So my grandma was very religious, Protestant religious.
Oh,
your
Protestant
dad's
my
mom?
religious.
mom's mom.
Mom's mom.
And so,
I would think Catholic. but-
yeah, my dad is Catholic. She was Protestant. And so when she married my dad, he actually kind of dominated and she did what he wanted to do. But talking to her, and they're kind of like, hey, how did this all happen?
Wait,
with
talking to who?
my aunt, who is my
Your
mom's
aunt.
sister.
Okay. I thought you were talking about your grandma. I was like, there's no
No.
way she's still around.
No, she's like with her grandma. She's like, Grandma, would really love that you're a pastor, all that. Again, and I saw that grandma once
Yeah.
at my mom's funeral. It's the only time I ever met her. And so she goes, we should love that you're a pastor, all that stuff. She goes, how did this happen? I go, well, my mom, it really started with my mom. I said, she took me to Awana and VBS, and I go, she took me to this little Christian church along with some of the Catholic stuff. She goes, really? I go, yeah. Like I was surprised, like
Yeah.
that was because my other aunt was like, so my dad's side of the family, my mom was super religious, like she's super into Jesus.
Yeah.
To her family, my mom swore like a truck driver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I thought my first name was Mother and my last name was
Yeah.
Effer, and so and to them they looked at kind of some of her exterior like behavior and would say, I can't believe that she's a believer.
Yeah.
Which is how people would look at my siblings. Like I've seen them give their life to Christ. I've seen a change. But if you didn't know them,
Right.
you would just think these are coarse people.
Yeah.
But they're not. They haven't been trained up
Yeah.
in a church to be different. So that was the first time I've ever seen anything other about my mom other than being this
Funny.
amazing woman who loves Jesus. Even like doubting like her salvation, which is not that she was doubting it. She
Yeah,
wasn't.
yeah,
she was
but-
just surprised. And I was like, yeah, my mom believed in Jesus. Like that's who she was.
Interesting, yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of a fascinating dynamic too, being
is.
like perspective.
Yeah. Well, way to start off on a high note,
Yeah.
everybody. It might be my fault. I wanted to talk about. I just think grief is fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it's so odd to me how difficult death is for us. It's odd because I'm like, yes, this is every one of us is going to die. So when somebody dies, I feel like all of us should go, yeah, that's what happens.
Right.
And we never do.
No.
I don't care how, when my grandmother was so sick and I'm like, I was asking God to take her. Like she was unhappy and I'm like, just end the pain. Then when she died, I'm like, oh, I'm sad.
Right.
Like
Right.
I still went through this I loved her so much and she was so, even in her like grumpy like sickness, she was still so fun to hang out with because I would get it. Like my goal was to make her laugh because she never laughed. So like,
Tough crowd is always the best.
so like breaking through that, and then eventually we would just be laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
And she's in pain but laughing, and I'm like, oh, I missed. Like there's still sadness there, even though I was expecting and wanting her to pass to get
Right.
through it.
Right.
And I'm like, and I don't know if it's cultural because there are cultures in the world that are like, oh, we celebrate death. Like
Right.
it's interesting to me. We just in the Western culture we have a very odd relationship with death. It's kind of it's
Yeah.
Well,
interesting.
The Middle East would say it's because life is so good for us. So in other cultures where life is rough, death is a relief.
Right.
So for us, we're like,
Right.
this is heaven. For a lot of Americans, this is heaven.
Right.
Like, how could you possibly want to die? You got everything you need here.
We're so finite in our mindset that it's like, how could it be better?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it gets,
That was the-
hopefully it gets a lot better.
That was the best part about Francis Chan's sermon. It was regarding, he was going basically through the entirety of Ecclesiastes and talking about it being the great equalizer. I mean, that because of the fall of man, like now doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, and it talks about better to hear a wise man's rebuke than what was it? Wise man's rebuke and then a rich man's something. Or something.
Flattery. That's Proverbs.
Right. No, it was something else in Ecclesiastes.
Oh, weird.
But it was a
Probably
constant
more
thing.
than once.
It's funny
But
because
again-
I literally was going to use that exact. It's Proverbs
Oh,
28 or
it's-
29. I was going to use that exact verse on Sunday. I just didn't get. I didn't.
It's so important.
That's
Written twice. But the idea of and then it's at that meaningless.
Oh, yeah.
Meaningless. Or KJV vanity. You know, it's all the I think Kizil, I think it is. Or no, Hevel. And that was really fascinating to me because he was really talking about like, this is all, it's all, why don't we talk about this more? Like, and he's saying that I'm not being rhetorical about that. Like, take some time this week, think about it. What am I not settled with? Like, if I'm gonna, and I remember my dad when we were sitting around the fire. We're up in Idaho, and we're kind of having a chat like this, and then just out of the blue, it wasn't about grief, but out of the blue, he goes, "I got to tell you something." I go, "Okay," and he's like, "I don't think we're supposed to witness death."
What?
And I'm like,
Explain.
"Are you okay, Dad? Like,
Yeah.
what's up?" And he's like, and he was just staring at the fire the whole time.
What's he mean?
And yeah,
Dad, get out of the fire.
and he's like, "It's just not natural. I think God designed the world to be a certain way, and we just we got in the way of that, and now
He's talking about the fall.
and
Yeah, which is an interesting thought. So
And he
we
says-
we
It's not
had
a
this
design.
conversation.
He's right.
He says it's
the
the
way God
consequence.
designed it was we were legitimately immortal.
Right.
So the fable goes,
Yeah.
right? Like so the story
in
of Genesis
harmony with
goes.
God, like in His
That,
presence.
that's a weird thought.
It's a very weird.
And
thought.
then the fall happens, and now, as a result, like your dad is saying,
yeah,
but we weren't supposed to experience death. I'm like, hold on,
But
God,
then- but-
what?
but the reason I think now I realize, I'm like, "Dad, what do you?" And he said, when your mom's dad passed away, we were there. We were at his house, and I saw him lean over in his chair and be with the Lord.
Yeah,
And he said, that bothers me to this day.
really?
Yeah, I
seems
believe
like a good way to go. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
For him, for Grandpa,
Seems
yeah.
like a great way
with
to just be
your
like,
daughter and your
hold on, let me get
son-in-law?
this magazine.
Yeah.
Watching
I'm like, that's awesome.
Which magazine was
Yeah,
he going to grab?
what was he grabbing?
At Home and Garden.
watching life
Some dumb magazine.
watching life leave someone's eyes or anything's eyes is really hard, I think. I
Yeah.
think that's a
Yeah?
rough, like, man, they're
Yeah.
just not there anymore. Even like when we're standing in front of an open casket, and I'm very much like, she's not there.
Oh.
Like we do this
Yeah.
as a tradition in
Right.
culture.
The physical
but she
vessel's
is
there.
not there.
That's
She's
not
with
the same
Jesus.
person.
Right.
Yeah, and that concept, I do think it's interesting to go back to the fall because that really does. That actually helps me when I think about the fall because I'm like, this is not the design. And so for us to be sad about it or weird about it, or it's like I agree with him. Like I get why we have trouble with it because this is not the design. It wasn't something that he designed us to be a part of. And even the idea of when I think about Jesus going to the crowd, he's not sad about Lazarus' death. It's not just because he was going to resurrect him. Do you know what I mean? He's sad for the people. I think that's always fascinated me. It's the people that makes him cry. He looks around,
Yes.
and he has
Yeah, yeah.
compassion.
And for
on them.
Mary.
Yeah, he has compassion on them is the word, and then he weeps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's almost this idea of I feel bad for you that you guys have to be a part of this. That's how I
I'm
look
so
at it.
confused by this thought. So he creates we would still die,
Would we? I literally want to know. Would we die? I
but
don't
what I'm
know.
thinking is
Because it was perfect
is
dominion
not
over
from
animals.
age,
Because we're going to eat fruit,
but it's,
that's going to
But at some point, somebody falls off a cliff.
Where someone gets eaten.
Someone
by
slips and falls off a cliff, and
drowns.
everybody's like,
This is the
"Is
thing.
he not getting back up?" Because
Right.
everybody gets back up. I wonder if it would just be like a mind blown.
maybe
first.
an angel would sweep down and save
Then
him.
I also think here's the problem: we're overpopulated real quick.
Yeah.
If nobody's dying.
Right.
So I'm like, was it?
Well, it would take some time, but yes.
Well, the other,
I don't know if it
There's
was.
only 2.
Well, here's the other
There
part.
was only 8.
Only 8 after the
yeah.
flood. That's
The
true.
exponential growth, like we're at 8
But
billion.
starting with 8 is
different.
different than starting with 2.
Well, and especially if you can live to 1,000,
You're already
you can just keep
exponentially-
populating.
Yeah, but that was like
you're
you're only,
second exponent.
but you're only looking at like a couple
Third exponent.
years.
That's true.
Yeah, no,
I'm just blown away by this thought. I'd never taken it to the nth
Right,
degree of like,
right.
How
if
does it work?
everyone's immortal.
In fact-
does that mean there's no death, or does that mean that there's just limited death and we're not aging out?
Right.
Or maybe we still age out, but it's at like 2,000. I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
Even then, the idea of entropy. Do things
Right.
decay? Are bodies who are dead just staying there and they don't turn to dust? Do you know what I mean? Like,
What if
do
they
things
just instantly turn to dust?
right? I don't even get it. Like,
Thanos. It's a Thanos snap.
it's funny. It's funny. This reminds me more of the would you
Every
rather,
2,000 years,
Yeah.
God Thanos snaps.
or
it.
like you can fly, but you're not invincible. You're like, well,
Yes.
then, like, well, wait a second.
slowly,
so
I'm
you're
gonna hit
a
gonna
bird.
die
Yeah,
real
yeah.
fast.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the
So
same idea. It's
intrigued.
like you can live forever, but you're not invincible.
Like most things on this podcast, we end segments with more questions than answers. So great job with that.
Yes.
We did a good job there.
Yeah.
So
Take time to grieve.
take time to grieve.
Yeah.
Gotta take time with a wounded hand.
Oh, because it likes to heal.
To heal. Likes to steal?
It likes to heal.
Likes to heal.
Likes to feel.
Oh.
I don't know.
Likes to cornmeal.
Does
The wounded hand makes cornmeal.
does he like to steal?
The hand does.
The hand likes
He
to steal.
hates it.
So the hand is the thing
Yeah.
from the Munsters.
Yes.
It's it.
Don't let your left hand know what your right hand
Oh,
is
it likes
doing.
to steal. Oh,
That
wait.
was what I said.
He changes
Likes
it
to
throughout
heal,
the-
likes
yeah,
to
yeah,
steal,
yeah,
because likes to heal, likes to steal.
Okay.
yeah. Gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, grief. Take time to grieve. That's the takeaway. Okay, good.
This next portion here is regarding on a Christian Post. Pastors, stop trying to fix people's problems.
And that just kind of created a question out of there, so you don't need to go through the article. And
But
I just wrote
kind of
the
a similar thing, like
Yeah.
when you're advising someone,
Yeah.
or just being there to listen. That's been that's been something I've had a question on with you guys is when you're in your connections, like taking lunch and theological breakdowns, or meeting with someone who's grieving, or
That's
I'm
like a
gonna move.
theological breakdown.
It is.
breakdown.
It is. Yeah. But that was New Testament.
Okay.
I'm Old Testament. But yeah, so how is that when you're approached to that with this, especially this topic of trying to fix people's problems? Is that kind of a form of sacrifice for yourself? Like,
Are you giving
putting
some of yourself
your-
away? What are you talking about?
no, just the idea of like, it might be a small one, but when you have, well, I feel like I know what the solution is. Like
Okay.
what the solution is to
Okay.
whatever issue is.
Get a job.
But then
go
the
ahead.
spirit
Right.
tells you, like, you feel the nudge of, because the purpose of it is the spiritual counseling,
Right.
and the spirit's giving you a nudge of just to listen the whole time.
Sure.
And then you walk
Yeah,
away
yeah.
going, well, what the heck?
Yeah.
I already knew the solution, God. Why didn't I?
But that's so what's funny is when you first read that, like, pastors stop trying to fix people's problems. And I was like, first of all, you stop writing stupid articles and I'll stop fixing you. That's a stupid premise to an article.
the question
in my
I posed
opinion.
out of it, which I thought was good from it, was, what are good boundaries? 'Cause
Yeah.
I think that's what they were saying is like,
Sure.
at some point, you have to have a good boundary.
Agreed.
For
and
yourself.
I think it was funny because immediately after having that thought, I went, oh, it's a case by case basis. Like there are times where you absolutely should be fixing that problem for that person, just at least showing them the solution, not that you're fixing it. And then but it really all depends on the spirit. And I go in and out of seasons where I spent a long season of trying to fix everything. And then God was like, dude, you need to back off. And sometimes the most healing that can happen, like, I will work with this person. You just need to be a sounding board for them. You need literally, it's like, I felt dumb. I felt like God said, I just want you to be a warm body for them to talk at. And I was like, no, that's not my speed. Like, and I went, fine. So I did that for a season and then back into a season of God being like, but it's funny because then I feel like God only brings me people with very substantive problems. Like they're not,
that have solutions.
yeah, they
Right.
literally have. I just had a meeting with a guy last week where I'm like, hey, man, here are your 5 solutions. These are the steps you need to walk through. If you don't walk through these steps, you have a big this is the outcome if you don't follow these. I'm not telling you to do them. I really am not. I'm just saying, like, tell me I'm wrong, and
Right.
we walk through them together and talk through it. And it's like, so to me, it's a case by case basis. It's if you're always sitting there listening and not offering solutions, you're probably not pastoring.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're always giving answers, you're probably not pastoring either. There's this healthy middle ground of when do I offer solution, when do I not, when do I, so you're always listening to the Spirit.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
my 2 cents.
That's good.
I'm going to
And
fix that problem right,
that's right.
there. That's what I'm,
In
problem with that article.
in counseling people, you obviously want to listen. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to listen, pay attention, understand what they're going through, empathize. Sometimes there's more of that, but a lot of times people come to a pastor for counsel. It's not like a therapist where they're looking for just immense amount of empathy,
Right.
Or even therapy because we can't provide therapy.
A lot of times they have questions.
That's right.
Right.
Very
They have-
specific
Right.
questions.
They're coming to you, and so whenever I do counseling, I say, hey, I start up front by saying, it's like, this isn't therapy. Like there are professionals that can give you therapy. I'm going to give you counsel, meaning I'm going to give you advice at some point. So I kind of go like, that's how this is going to go.
And we're going to talk through it. It's not like
right.
this is the ultimatum.
Right. But I don't want you to be
But it's-
surprised
Yeah,
that
but
I'm going
it's
to give you some
advice.
counsel.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
You know, so, and a lot of times the counsel could be is you need therapy. Like
Right.
we'll say that all the time. We'll be like, hey, this is more than my advice. So my best advice is to get therapy, get a therapist on there. And also gifting. I'm not a therapist.
Right.
I'm actually not the person who's going to spend 3 hours giving you empathy. I'm actually
Mm.
the person who's going to listen. I'm going to empathize, and then I'm going to give you some counsel on how some steps to take.
Yeah. That too.
Steps to take. So yeah, so I definitely think it's even in that moment, case by case, it's moment by moment. In there, I'm like, what do I need? Even
Yeah.
like when I'm doing counsel, I'm asking the Lord,
Oh, the whole time.
like, do you want me to be quiet here? Do you want me to say something here? What do you want me to do? And a lot of times, it's questions.
Uh-huh.
The Lord's leading
Yeah.
me to ask questions that kind of go deeper. Like, hey, and funny, we do this enough that in conversations, a lot of times they'll be like, hey, don't blow past that. What do you mean by
Yeah.
that? Unpack that a little bit. I want
Yeah.
to understand.
And I still am a firm believer in it sounds manipulative and it's not, but if you if my solution to you is to go get a job, like that's the solution for a
Right,
problem
right.
that you bring me,
Yeah.
and I just tell you to go get a job, that's fine. If in our conversation you come to the realization, oh my gosh, I think I need to get a job,
better.
it's 1,000 times better.
Your ideas, you'll act on your own ideas
Yeah.
more than you'll act on mine.
So it's an interesting game, and again, not in a manipulative way.
Right.
It's just trying to get you to trust yourself also, and for you to like,
Yeah.
if you come to that solution and then I encourage it, then it's such a different game when you, because then you come to me all excited, like, oh my God, I got a job, and I'm like, dude, you're the man. Like it just is, and it's better for your life. Because truthfully, one of the worst things we can do as pastors is be super codependent.
Right.
I need you to need me. Like I need you to always come to me for counseling.
This is where the boundary is.
Ooh.
This is where that
Yeah,
boundary-
that's
you don't want to
not
do this
good.
to yourself.
And what's funny is most people do what I've met a lot of pastors that's what they thrive on.
Crazy.
Were you ever in seasons of that? Did you ever?
For sure.
Yeah.
I didn't
Were
know
you?
any better. I wasn't trying to get them to. I just kept doing it, and I kept being like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I opened the
that way.
door,
Yeah.
and then I know you can't close that door.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whoa, like this is not the
Or they
dynamic.
close it, and you're like, "What happened?"
No, that part's better for me. My
Yeah,
personality
right.
is
Yeah.
Okay, good. They're good.
I started that way in my ministry, and it was all out of good intention, which I think
Sure.
everyone it's out of good intention. And it was this like, oh my gosh, look how needed I like. It really was this almost conscious thought of like, all these people need me. And then I was like, wait, and it was funny because nothing happened. It wasn't a blow up or anything. It was just kind of God being like, do you want that weight? Do you want to carry that? Because
I was gonna say.
I'm supposed to carry that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to carry
Right.
that.
I don't even know
What's
if
funny.
fathom the weight.
Yeah,
of
it was
that.
when a kid knocked on my door at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning and handed me a suicide note.
Oh.
And he's like, I just wanted to say thank you and goodbye. And I grabbed the note and I go, is this what I think it is? He goes, yeah, but please don't open it until tomorrow morning.
Oh gosh.
And I go, come on, man. You got to knock this crap off. And had a conversation with him on my doorstep. And I said, here's the deal. I'm not opening this. And I'm going to give this back to you tomorrow. And I said, you show back up at my door. But I said, here's the deal. And this is probably stupid advice. But I said, if in the morning you feel the same way, we'll have a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I said, you need to get through this night. This night is, you're in a dark spot. I said, you need to get through this night. Promise me you will come back and get this. Okay, but I'm not going to feel any different. Great. And he showed back up the next day, handed him the note. I go, do you want to hand this back to me? And he goes, no. He goes, I was just in a weird spot. And I go, okay. And then we met a lot. But I realized, I was like, I don't want to be in that spot again. I don't want that kind of weight because I don't have those answers. That might have been the dumbest thing I could have done. I don't know. I was not, like Joe said, I'm not trained in this. I just have what I feel like the Lord is telling me. And so I went, I don't want that kind of weight anymore. So everything was any conversation I had, it was pointing them to Scripture, pointing them to God, pointing them to counseling, pointing them to therapy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to be the center of anyone's universe. I just don't.
I think that. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I just think that the nature of that being his worldly life in jeopardy, right? The weight of that. But then I think of what we're talking about and what we believe being their eternal life and the accountability of that, which I find bigger,
It is
heavier. And I'm not saying I find it heavier, but I'm saying I feel it. I recognize that. And so, and that's kind of going back to the Ecclesiastes thing, like what really matters, what's important, what has meaning.
Yeah.
And so I think that's and you and I have had kind of conversations about that, of going through this. And I think that's where I'm at. I think I'm in a season of, I wouldn't say depression. Like, I know me when I'm depressed.
Yeah.
I would not have laughed at any jokes or come to any events or done anything.
Yeah.
It's more of a it feels like a molding season where God is shaping me into something else.
Yeah.
And
he's getting your priorities straight.
right.
Getting to a place. What happened with me, I'm not saying this is your journey or anything, but what happened with me is everything really is vexation of spirit. This is so vain, so much so that I'm like, do I just join a monastery? Like, is that the next step? And then God bringing me back into this weird place of, hey, what's funny is it's the old Israelite fable that they have a story that God created a playground in the earth, and his only desire is that his kids get along together and play. And I was like, oh, I had lost my enjoyment of the earth. And because I looked at it as evil, I looked at it as fallen.
Sure.
And I think God brought me to this really cool place of, I still made it. Just because I handed it over at some point doesn't mean this isn't my He made this for our enjoyment. And so moving then into this really cool place of, absolutely, this is worthless, but I still really like wakeboarding.
Yeah.
But there's no benefit to wakeboarding, but I want to go. Snowboarding is like, it is so good for my soul, and there's no point to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And God's like, dude, go snowboarding more.
Falling in style.
And I love it so much.
Yeah,
I just want to do it at all times.
I became like huge fan of the mandated reporter. Like, some people don't like that dynamic. So like, I'm a 7, so I want to move on. So for me, I never wanted that. I don't want to be people's Jesus. Like, I had to go the other way where I had to learn how to be like, how do I walk with people through stuff? How do I sit with them? I'm not looking for that connection to be like, I'm your person. I'm really not. That's just not, I'm not wired that way. As a pastor, I do that. I'll walk with you through stuff. But the reality is, I'm glad to hand people over, even in ministry, the fact that we have, recovery pastors.
Yeah.
I am glad to move that over there. Like, any situation where someone's saying like, hey, I want you to get the help. I don't need to be that person. And in fact, I realize I'm not a therapist, so I don't want to be that person. Like, that is not my thing whatsoever. I've worked on where the Lord's like, this is your person. Like, you're going to spend time counseling them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that actually, whereas I have the opposite, like, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. Like, this is love.
I was going to say, you're still open to it, though.
I am. I'll do whatever the Lord tells me to do. But in general, I'm definitely more like, I want you to get the help you need. I know I'm not wired that way, and I'll do it. But there's certain people, I probably have 3 or 4 people that I give counsel to. Like, it's not like I'm discipling them. Like, they just need some counsel.
Sure.
That I'll do that for. But in general, like, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
But so the handing them off is just, I think it's brilliant. And by the way, back to the boundary dynamic, the whole reason of this is I know that's a boundary I need to maintain. I have to have the mixture one is where I need to hand them off. And for me, I also need to be open when the Lord says, go ahead and meet with this person. So.
Yeah. It's funny, the boundary for me, and I don't think I'm the healthiest at it yet because I still am a little confused on it, is
sin.
Yeah, I just don't know. Maybe God's cool with it.
Your life
I'm
reflects that
joking.
mantra.
Yeah, exactly. Is the attention people give to the upfront people. So like, you experience that a ton where it's just like, Josh is the best. He's singing, his voice is so amazing. He's such a great musician. And it's like, I've just come to oh, thank you. That's super. I totally appreciate that. That's great.
Sure.
But the dynamic then of when people are like, oh my gosh, can I meet with you? I've had more people lately, and I don't know why, ask me to sponsor them.
I don't know what that means.
In like
You mean
AA and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not in like, I'm not part of this world. And I always say no. I'm like, no, it's not. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know what the
I'm glad
responsibility
you're searching and you're asking, but
I literally am just like, go talk to our recovery
Wrong
pastor
tree.
immediately.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. And it's so not just in that aspect, but it's like the accolades and the people wanting to put you on a different tier I'm like,
Connect that to boundaries. So what do you
so
do
the
with
so
that?
the boundary for me is hey, what's up? The boundary for me is it's just like, so I've always just been like, oh no, and just like get away. And I say I appreciate it. It's not like it's weird.
Yeah.
Get out.
And
now.
I think that's the right thing. I think it's just constantly. Sometimes I wonder, like, is there a place? Because I don't know. My thought was that I always have is like, is there a place to just like how can I make people stop doing that? And then I read scripture and I'm like, they did that to all the guys in scripture too. Like, so it's not that it in and of itself is bad. It's what's the right way. Because I also don't want to be such a jerk that I'm just like, you're a bad person for wanting that. Like, you know, but that's kind of sometimes how I feel is I'm just like, don't. Like, it's stupid for you. And my problem is I have such an issue with celebrity. Like, I hate it so much because of how people put people in the space of God. So I'm like, I want you to stop doing that. Don't look at me or anyone else. First of all, it's hilarious because you're like, I'm an idiot. And so it's like, no, only look at God. And so I'm afraid that sometimes I even come across as mean, where I'm like, it's wrong of you to even say thank you to me for a sermon that I preached. Don't thank me for that's so stupid. That wasn't me that touched your heart. That was the Holy Spirit.
How did it impact you?
Do you also though then feel the pull of, well, that feels good, that people like they like your speaking, and not that you need to be their God or you want to walk with them for the rest of their life, but also that kind of boundary of how much do I accept the praises of people?
I think that is what actually scares me. Yeah. So the practical side of like, just thank God, like and it's not bad to thank someone for a great sermon. I don't think that's bad, because then I go,
I'm waiting for that day.
Yeah, it'll happen. Then I kind of do the like, well, yeah, but like you don't prepare a sermon just going, God, I'm going to stand there and you talk to everybody. Yeah. You write words down, and then you decide how to deliver those words in the most
part in it.
impactful way.
Yeah. Sure.
There's a skill along with a talent, along with a gift.
It says the writer was carried along by the Holy Spirit, meaning he wrote.
Yeah. And so I have this weird like, and it scares me the most to ever take credit for it. Even in the like, yeah, I did write that really well. And I did put this funny part in to make people laugh, to where I broke down the wall in order to get this point across.
Right.
That was me.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, that was a pretty good job. That terrifies the heck. Because to me, that next step is the stupidity of the celebrity pastor. It's getting to that place where then it's, and I do think it's such a short, slippery slope that we will fall in.
It's also the road to sadness if you don't get the accolades that
Oh,
you're
yeah,
expecting.
you're right.
There's the other side of it, like, oh
Like
man,
your self-worth and
like
all that.
people aren't talking to me. Nobody said that was good. I think the boundary I place in there is that I limit that place of celebration to very few people. Like Lisa, I'll actually talk to about my sermons. And that's kind of realized.
As far as you making the ask?
Yeah, just like talking it out and like accepting any praise on that. I try to limit that to where, like, if someone says something like, great, thanks, awesome, you know what I mean? But with Lisa, I'll actually talk through it, because I feel like with her is a place I won't overwhelm with pride.
What about when people...
Because she'll also not always be like, everything's amazing.
Yeah, well, she hates
helpful.
your sermons. She doesn't like your preaching, so it actually, that's easier. What do you do with the people who will be like, oh, I'm only saved because of Joe? And they'll do that in like a
after
public
I say you're
setting.
right. After I say you're
Yeah, yeah, after you affirm
it. That's
them.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people do that.
They do it all the time. That's everybody. That's the people who say that about you. They'll say it
But
about
no. I'm saying it's like that kind of grosses me out. Like I have this weird no.
That's incorrect.
And it just feels so awkward.
You do it all the time. You're like, well, you know, we do the classic, like, you know, I'm glad God used it. Do you know what I mean? Like redirecting. It's funny, as I did a sermon at First Baptist, and I said something like it was always true, and it's not. Like we accept honor and we give praise, right? We give glory, right? But the truth is, God also then glorifies us. It says those have just been glorified. Weird. So there's also glory. But I really thought the easiest way for me to wrap my mind around it is like, oh, I feel very honored by that. But the glory goes to God. That's kind of how I kind of buffer that. But at the same time, it's intoxicating. It's 100% intoxicating.
Do you guys have a strategy at all in how to stay humble? Do you guys consciously do anything, or Is there, when you think of it, maybe it's not an everyday thing, but how do you guys stay? Because really, you're a phenom musically.
Oh, thank you.
It's
Oh,
sorry, Josh, not you. I was talking to
Me.
Joe.
Yeah.
Like Jay Smooth has made a career for himself.
Yeah.
that is, I would say,
Put
unprecedented.
Chicago on the map.
unprecedented.
Unprecedented. I would, yeah. It's you're infamous now.
It's
not just
if
famous.
unprecedented is good, it's precedented.
Oh, good.
Precedented?
It is very
funny.
precedented. It is a funny
You'd
thought.
still take infamous over nothing.
Sure.
Yeah. What's your
So
your
just
strategy,
that, like,
Josh?
and not the. I'm talking about the things you do privately, not in the, because I know we all do the deflection and
we
we go,
deflect.
oh,
Sure,
thanks.
sure.
Like, I'd appreciate that.
And
but-
I'll bet even what you're trying to be humble about is probably different than what we think. Because they probably have a pride that might not be connected to something publicly, but might just something in your own heart. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Oh,
where-
interesting.
Right.
I
Oh,
think-
that would be a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
mine are more that, which is weird. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it, I think it's just the way God has allowed my life to go.
It'd be your failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He just keeps humbling me.
He just keeps.
just
I have had no
continuous.
success. So how can I be?
and actually, in reading through Ecclesiastes, it was the overall arching message. Like if you titled it "Humility," that would make more sense to me. And
You're really on this Ecclesiastes thing.
it was a recent thing that I was just reading through.
That's very aware of it.
and yeah,
His
and
favorite pastor preached a sermon.
That's what I was going
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Solomon, heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was thinking of Francis Chan.
he's one of the wise guys.
Franny Chan.
Yep.
Franny Chan.
And
Fran.
no,
his
that
message?
was just part of the search from sermons and messages through it, and significantly, obviously, recovery. That's something that I don't. It's interesting, it's like a system that isn't something that's so simple, like like the word and living and following Christ. There's no loopholes. There's no. There are if thens, but it's not dependent on anything else. It's a perfect module for life,
Yeah.
which is just also evidence for being perfect. And so with the steps being written from people of faith, I think they're perfect. I think if you do them appropriately and accurately,
Steps
and,
written, okay.
and you devote yourself to them.
Okay.
And the first three are to just cut yourself and die to self, as
okay.
our buddy
Bob's never said that. Don't
Bob Robson.
He never
and
mentions it.
yeah, and that concept for me it's taken time. And
But what?
part of-
Okay, so practically, what's that look like?
Is
then?
that self talk?
Die to self. What are
So-
you actually doing? Are you just thinking thoughts, like self-deprecating
well,
thoughts? That's all I do. You're so stupid.
Your singing's terrible.
Hate yourself.
So the first three steps is admitted that we're powerless to alcohol and that our lives have become unmanageable, or drugs, or gambling, or sex, or whatever your vices are.
So the first step is okay.
Admitting
yeah.
just okay.
yeah.
And then
Yeah,
the
which
second
is
step
super
is
humbling.
came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity.
Can I pick at this?
Yeah.
How? This is gonna sound just dumb, but like,
Sure.
How do you actually get to that place of, okay, I finally am actually acknowledging that I'm powerless against this? Is that just a process?
It's a
that just-
process.
Is that rock bottom?
Yeah,
Is
right,
that-
yeah,
is it-
yeah.
is
a
it
lot
just
of
like,
people.
I can't do it.
I would say the most impressive testimonies are when people don't hit rock bottom, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah,
well,
that's
actually,
funny. I was
okay, I'm
thinking
not trying
that.
to say mine is impressive, but I'm saying that because I can empathize with it.
No, yours
Like
is the
you had-
most impressive journey.
Like you had,
is what
you
you're saying.
have,
Nailed
you
it.
have, you had more to go. Like you could have, like
Oh,
I
for
never,
sure.
I didn't get to drink legally. Like I could if I
that is
wanted
actually
to.
funny.
I could leave here
Yeah.
and go ruin my life.
Oh, you wanna
And-
go?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And so then step two came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, and then three became willing to submit our will and our lives to this higher power. For the pursuit of your sobriety and your faith in this higher power. So then a guy at the meetings said very simply, "Here's the three steps. I can't, he can, let him." And
good.
so part of that is it's when you just chew on something like that for day after day at a time, it just changes you. And
Yeah.
I think it crafts you closer to the way God wants you to be, and it's so perfect because it can, regardless of your personality or your walk or your even your higher power, that module is just perfect. It will improve your life drastically.
So advise somebody then, like, hey, I'm really struggle with this, or advise somebody on how to humble themselves and how to get to that.
Okay.
I'm struggling with pride.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Yeah.
All right. So
And you too. I want to hear what you had to say about it.
my sponsor.
I suck at this.
My sponsor helped me a lot with it.
I just am prideful. I gave myself over to the pride.
I don't. It's not a struggle. I know it. My sponsor said, "You're doing this wrong." I said, "No, thanks." And he's like, "You can't be less selfish by waking up every morning saying, 'God, help me not be selfish today,' because the first few words are, 'God, help me.'"
Right.
You're just talking about you. You're thinking about you. You're looking out for you. He says you got to be done doing that. And he says, focus on serving others. It's about serving others. In fact, the entirety of recovery would not be successful if it weren't for sponsorship and sponsees. He says, and I believe that is a model from the community aspect that Jesus calls to in serving others.
Yeah.
And so he says, when you find yourself doing that, write it down. When you find yourself in it's hard to fight it, right? You're at work. You can't just I need to take a break and pray and go help someone. If you find yourself getting caught up in you, just write down what you're feeling. And then immediately, as soon as you can, text me, call someone, but then actively serve someone.
It's good.
And so it was just day in and day out of trying to do that, not doing it perfectly, not wanting to do it.
Yeah.
So what's the wake up prayer then instead?
Well, it
Let's
used
say
to
you're
be,
struggling with pride.
Yeah, it used to be, God, let me not be a jerk today. And then he had to change that, right? And so he's like, God, help me be of service. Thank you for today. And I would think about my grandma always referencing that this is the day the Lord has made, and let us rejoice and be glad in
So
it.
good. Such a good
And it's
scripture.
like, what a cheesy verse.
No, it's
But
amazing.
it is actually,
Yeah.
I'm like, you realize that, again, all things die. And then that you're given life, first of all. And then that God did not take you in your sleep.
Yeah.
And that you have a purpose. And that purpose is bigger than you. It has nothing to do with you. And so that was something that that just shaped every aspect of my life. And so being involved with music and being in front of people and performing and all that, it was kind of like this is why I'm here. This is part of who I am, and specifically, and people make it bigger than I go. No, I'm just another person. I'm a human who likes to play music.
Yeah.
And God's given me a talent and a gift, but it's for Him. It's to glorify Him. Has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And it's, if anything, it's the breath leaving me that's just singing, just breath going in and out of me.
Yeah.
And so,
It's good.
yeah, so it's just been, it had nothing to do with
That's interesting.
practical things. Like it took time.
Yeah. I'm enamored with there's been a surge in Hollywood. I don't know what you'd call that word, but who played Spider-Man?
Tom Holland.
Which one?
Tom Holland's the newest
Tobey
one.
Maguire, Tom
newest
Holland.
one is Tom Holland.
Andrew Garfield.
So Tom Holland is on a journey now because he's just he found a good amount of success at a fairly young age, and I guess he's doing a new documentary or something that's basically trying to be more mindful of everything else, that this isn't the end all. And I've heard that from you see Russell Brand's conversion and so many people like that who just hit this place of it's not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
There's more than this than me. And so that journey of what really does look like humility, I don't know how it pans out for anyone. It's not that. It's just that a lot more people than I thought are coming to that place of, oh, I'm not the center of the universe, and they're humbled, and then they pursue truth. Most of them are finding God, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting. So I like
good.
that. Like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Mine's more complicated, I think. So being humble, I definitely struggle with pride. Mine's weird because mine has all these weird spiritual, being a pastor, my pride now has spiritual attachments that justify my pride. So like, so for me, like I'm just being vulnerable.
I was going to say, unpack it.
Yeah. I want to be wanted so I can share Christ with people.
Yeah.
So my journey to humility is focusing on the end and what God will do, not what I'll do. So that's kind of my piece. So that's really where my struggles are, is I want it for a good reason, but then I still want it. So I have to let that part go and then just release it over to God. So for me, it's a lot of turning it over to God for his purposes, his timing, his will, his plan. Because I do really genuinely want that. Like if you were to cut me open, I want to see the world saved. It'll make me cry. That'll make me cry.
Yeah.
I want to see the world saved. That's what I want. But how much of that is for me?
No, that's the wrestle for me is, can I, let's just say the plan is God's going to use you to save 1 million people.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're like, yeah, absolutely, I'm in 100%, God. And God's like, cool. No one will know it's you.
Yeah.
No one will recognize your name. No one will give you an ounce of that. It's kind of like a pastor read your book, shared it, not the book, but shared information to the person. The person gets saved. They credit that to the pastor. Nobody ever mentions your name.
Yeah.
And you literally live your whole life. But 1 million people, because of you, got saved, are now in heaven. You have zero accolades. You have zero money on this earth. You are nothing.
Yeah.
Can you be okay? Like,
And that's the journey to that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's
that's
exactly it.
that's a neat.
That's the letting it go.
Yeah,
but
that's
part of that
crazy.
is that not determining the process is how that works for me. Is like if I determine the process, I'd lay it all out, how it works, how it's going to get done, and then I'm a big part of the process.
You're be a major part of it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
As opposed to just like, no, like I want that. I have some things that I believe you're going to do, and I just let that go. My process of humility is letting go. Like I have to let go of all these things.
And
that I
what's
think
so
is-
again, just practically, because this is fun. Like, what's that look like practically to let something go?
It's in the morning in my prayer times.
Okay.
Where I just kind of go back to, and even just this conversation will purify it again tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like it'll make it even like, oh yeah. And here's the funny part is, when I let pride go for what God wants to do in the world, I'm better. I'm freer. I'm lighter. You know what I mean? Because basically the idea of humility ends up being is that, because if I'm prideful, then not only the victories, but the failures are on me. Right?
Yeah.
If it's about me, I also carry
Absolutely.
the weight of the failure.
Yeah.
And so if I'm humble, I don't carry the glory and I don't carry the failure. I just carry the faithfulness. And so that's the process for me. It's always just being like, all right, let me, you do what you want to do, whatever promises you're making. Here's another one is be present, right? A lot of that is for me is humility is I'm here right now in this.
Yeah.
Whatever you're calling me to do in this moment. So those are mine, but it's weird because they're kind of
The
mixed.
presence was something you shared that was something you struggle with because your personality is you're always looking to the next best thing.
And so just being, honestly, traveling and going and being away for a week and coming back helps me more present, helps me be more thankful for everything I have.
Yeah.
It sounds weird, but you just come back, you're
No,
like,
very much.
so thankful for this.
Yeah. That
So-
doesn't sound weird at all. No, that's huge.
So what about you? What's yours?
Oh man, I don't know. I think I'm in a weird season right now of feeling. My struggle right now is I'm not sure if I'm actually being called or if it's what I want. So that's the kind of tension that I'm under right now. Is I have a lot of hopes and dreams and thoughts and aspirations that I feel like are from God. And some of which I've had to put on the shelf, some of which I'm like, am I supposed to take this off the shelf now? Like, is this an endeavor for me now? And I'm trying to figure out, do I feel called by God? Because I wanted to say I feel called to this, and I'm like, actually, I'm not even sure I do. I just maybe want these things. And so I'm trying to figure out, all of those things, by the way, are what feel like that I'm supposed to do more. That I'm supposed to, whether it's study scripture more, I have some cool opportunities in front of me, and I'm like, and they're all work. And here's the crappiest part. That's what I love.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me like, hey, you're going to have to work your tail off for 5 weeks so that you can achieve this thing, I'm like, I don't need to sleep.
Yeah.
I won't sleep. I'll nap every once in a while, and I will just go full bore because I feel so accomplished. You know, like I'm that idiot that thinks it's good to sleep little because you're working. That's the dumbest thought
Sleep when
ever.
I'm
but
dead.
dude. That is the stupidest thought ever.
no, you're dead.
But that's how whether it's upbringing or what, that's how I feel. And so it's the weirdest process right now of being like, how much of that is from you, God? And because then sometimes I kind of get this weird glimpse of, you know what, I'm just going to take off and go to the wilderness. Like I'm just going to go because then at least I know my intentions are pure because I can close all this distraction out and I can't have much pride if it's me alone in the which is so untrue. I would have a ton of pride. You know, I would think I'm better than everyone else still running the rat race. And it's just foolish to think that. But and I am it's a weird tension of how much do I do saying no to opportunities that are awesome.
Yeah.
And opportunities that I've really wanted.
Oh, saying no.
Because you're worried it's about you and not God's
Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know if that
yours is complicated because your kids are young. So
my kids are still young.
I can see why that's more of it. It's like if it was just you, you'd be like, yes.
100%. I would say yes to everything.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid to miss out on anything. And so there's this, I don't know, so it's that weird tension of like trying to stay present with my family and making sure they're the priority. Because I do think, I think no matter what, even if you're like, God is calling you to be very successful, I don't think he would ever call you to be successful at the sacrifice of your family.
I don't agree
ever,
with that.
right?
No, I don't
Right.
think
So I have to go, well, shoot, if God is calling me to this, what do I do with this? What do I do with the family that is number one?
Especially when you have a successful wife.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
She's a baller.
you're mixing that together.
Oh, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
lately,
what's the practical way you stay humble then? Is it a mantra? What is it?
the way I'm doing it is not healthy right now.
Okay.
It's to totally detach. I have almost completely nixed social media out of my life because I don't want to. I saw what that's like and how I get with like, oh my gosh, people give a rip what I have to say and what I do. So the more I feed into that, the more it's feeding into me and it's feeding into a darker spot of me. So I'm like, I'll detach from that. I will only do the bare minimum publicly. I will basically kind of close my life off. My marriage is very sacred and alone. My family is too. I don't want to open that up to anyone else. I don't think that's the healthiest thing.
Yeah.
It's just what I inadvertently, subconsciously did. So now I'm in this place of like, wait a minute, I think I might feel called to this. And I know the way this works is to actually be more social, even in like the media space. And so I'm like, God, is that it again? So that's my spot right now is that what I'm supposed to do? And am I healthy enough at this stage in my life to pursue those things and do them successfully the way I know it works? And then not care and be like, so when people, make a comment on a video and it's like, oh my God, you're the greatest. And I'll be like, yeah, whatever. Like that's as silly to me as somebody telling me I'm horrible.
Right.
Where both of those things are just kind of silly and I don't take it that seriously.
But you're going to have to read them. But that's part of the problem is that you're going to, even if you can brush them off, you're still you're going to be dealing with them.
Yeah, exactly. So
you're gonna be dealing with them.
And I know that even as little as like Instagram, I used to do stuff on Instagram, so it got kind of big. But even in just responding to my stuff, I would scroll across other people's feeds, which would make me jealous.
Right.
So like it sounds silly. I love The Rock. I just enjoy the guy.
Yeah,
I like the guy. But I can't look at one of his things without being like, dang it, I got to get back in the gym.
Right.
Like, I got to take steroids. There's no way.
Hence why they've been banning Instagram for children.
Right.
Because it's
I won't let my kids near any type of that
What's
stuff.
your favorite phrase? Comparison is the...
I came up with comparison is the thief of all joy. No, I came up with that. That's my saying.
I said it's his favorite phrase.
Yeah, it's my favorite phrase. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love saying it.
And so anyway, that's the journey right now, and it is trying to figure out what's the healthy version of this, because I think there was a spot in my life where it was probably smart to detach, because I'm like, it got a little hold of me too much.
Sure.
So detaching was healthy, and then I'm like,
You're seeing from the public?
Yes. And I mean, even in terms of, so like social media is one thing, but then even in the like, where am I going to go?
Right.
Like, I'm going to spend time with these I have like 8 people. This is my family, my crew.
Right.
I'll spend time with you guys, but I don't want to go to an outside event because I'm afraid of the crap, good, bad that I'll feel from other people. So I'm like, you know what? I just won't go to that event that you invited me to.
So you feel like when you're quantifying where you're at, humility versus pride, is that more in regards to like it's less affected in your private life than it would be in public life?
Much less.
Oh, okay.
Much less.
Okay.
Those people that are in that inner circle, if you will,
Yeah. They
don't
keep you
think I'm
humble.
a big deal.
They keep you
Yeah.
humble.
They love me, and they think. And honestly, the reason they're there is because they're so encouraging and they're so for me.
Right.
But they don't flatter. I don't have flatterers. I don't have
Well,
like,
and which is funny because flattery is totally
yeah, and that what's
the
funny
cheapest
is,
form of.
and Proverbs speaks to flattery so much and how
Right.
it's just like it's so dumb. It's
Right.
not. It's
yeah.
not good for either one of
right.
you.
It's not glorifying or praising
Yeah.
like you
At
think it
least
is.
in my inner circles, if they even say I did good at something, they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Like
Right.
they don't, and I'm like, what, more?
Can I-
You know, like,
And
can
they
you
won't
keep
give
going?
it to you.
No, they,
and if
they don't.
you
can't bring
if you
it back
fish
up.
for it at all, they're letting you know. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's actually what I want. I
It's
want people to be like, hey,
impossible.
that was really good. What was your favorite part? Settle down. And you go, oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
What's funny is it's actually the other part about this is it's never enough. If that's what you're after, you're never satisfied.
That's depression, right?
Right.
there.
Yeah, it's never enough. They can't talk about it enough to actually satisfy that hole, that that desire to just be like, oh, you're amazing.
Isn't that sad?
Right.
It's not.
You guys are dads, so that was something when you were talking about that, and whether it's seclusion or if it's a prayer in the morning. How do you think you've best modeled humility for your kids?
I put them down often.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. I make sure they know
I don't need to take notes for that.
you are not the apple of my. You're the
I am
tomato
prepared.
of my eye. You're the.
I've done a bad job of it.
You think so?
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was something I got better at as I got older because Lisa's like,
I was going to say past tense. You
Yeah.
feel, but you think you're good. You think I think
No.
you've done a much.
now I want to. Honestly, the best way to model humility is be a listen first person. Like I'd always want to chime in, be like, I want to tell them stuff like, "Hey, here's something good," and it just came across as arrogant to my kids, which I thought I'm in a safe place. They're not your peers; they're your children, and so it's coming
Right.
across differently. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It sounds like I'm bragging. I think I'm trying to connect,
Yeah.
and I think I'm bragging, and so I've had to go the other way, where I realized for my kids, anyways, it's about making it about them. That's how I model humility, where I walk away, and I didn't talk about myself at all. I talked about them. If I talk about myself even a little bit, my kids notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to be like,
interesting.
okay, it's about you. I want to make it about you. Not even a relatable anecdote.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? It has to be. So I've gotten better at it now, but that's kind of the thing is that, and that is a good, if you live your life listening to, and both my kids are very good listeners. And I think that's from Lisa. But so that's anyway, so that's for me is the best is modeling behavior. If you want to be humble, it's not talking
Yeah.
about humility.
I mean,
it's,
that
it's making
was
about other
pretty
people.
humble, saying it was all Lisa.
Yeah.
That's all Lisa.
I don't think anything beats the modeling for children. You can, and they've done studies on it. You can say anything you want, but people are just watching your actions.
Right.
Which is genuinely one of the more humbling things when you have kids, is you realize, do I want my kid to be like me? Like, is that what I actually want? Because you're like, oh no, I want my kid to be way better than me.
Right.
Then it's like, cool, then you got to be better.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shoot, like that's such a weird realization that, like, I don't want my kids to have my shortcomings, but they are seeing them.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, so I very actively work on my shortcomings, and then when I make the mistake, I try and be very quick to tell them, like, oh, hey man, like I should not have snapped at you. And my kids are like, you didn't snap, and I'm like, I did. Like I actually spoke too quickly.
Right.
I should have done this.
Yeah.
And I try and hedge my mistakes quickly with them. Luckily, my kids are very gracious.
Yeah.
And it is funny because I do see it as, just like you said, Ashley has done the bulk of heavy lifting early on. being very mindful of teaching the kids certain things.
Mm.
I was more like, I'm hanging out with my boys, like it's fun.
Yeah.
And then it's slowly crept into me too, where I'm like, oh, you're right. We should do this mindfully. Like I need to be very purposeful in how I'm behaving.
And shortcomings with kids, what's successful with other people isn't always successful with your kids.
Sure.
So that's also something learning that I have to grow with them. Like, because they get me all the time. And so I have to realize there's certain things that aren't being received well. But anywhere else, it's
You're
great.
right. You're right.
But with them, I'm like, okay, they need something
Yeah.
different, especially because we're in the public eye.
Yes.
So if I'm doing anything they've seen me do with someone else, it's always like,
Yeah.
whatever. It's what you say to everybody. It's what
Yeah.
you know, even though I think I'm being loving and empathetic.
Yeah.
They're like, no, that's just what you do with everybody else. I want something else.
Yeah.
But I realize the one thing that doesn't work is listening.
Yeah.
That's never a problem. Even
right.
not asking too many questions, which is weird in this generation. Sitting in silence with them.
Yep.
Just being present.
Yeah.
I think that admittance, though, that like, hey, sorry, I snapped at you, you know, and like, oh, it wasn't a big deal, like, and in some ways that can be that in itself can be a oh no, I just want to get my side clean, like but my dad, we would, I mean, I just remember being I'm just a punk kid throughout my whole childhood, and I got in trouble for anything and everything you could think of. What's funny is I don't remember the punishment. Like I remember it was capital, you know, it was strict and it was, you know, it disciplined me. But what's funny is my brain doesn't even remember it. You know what I do remember is after the punishment at night, but before we go to bed, my dad he'd always sit with me and go, hey, like, you know, I love you, and I'm sorry if this feels like, you know, I'm not trying to take fun away from you from going with your friends or going outside or doing whatever. Like, it's, I hope you understand that I do care about you. I'm trying to do the best I can with you. And he could have said anything. And, but just him taking that moment to sit and to share his heart spoke volumes.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like, did he ever like bring up that you're adopted, that he adopted you?
That he chose you.
I'm just trying to make the most of my money, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, my
no.
friend who was adopted used to say, like, her parents told her all the time, we chose you. Like, that brought a lot of, like, security to her. I always
Yeah.
chuckle because I'm like, I feel like you can just as easily use that. Thing. Like, look, we chose you.
we
can
chose
unchoose you.
wrong.
You better step it up.
Like, hey, Dad, you have to have regrets in your life? Yes. It's like, oh.
Oh, no.
No, they would say God chose, because my sister and I
cool.
are both adopted.
That's cool.
And so I didn't have any comparison.
Yeah.
Other than cousins or whatever, or my friends. And it's like, God chose you for our family.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, we should wrap up.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to go. Let's do some would you rathers.
Sure. Would you rather be arrogant or insecure? That's a good
I mean,
one.
it's funny.
That's very
very
apropos.
appropriate.
Yeah.
I couldn't fathom choosing insecure. Couldn't fathom it.
Even a little bit.
What do you mean? Oh, you couldn't fathom choosing it.
Yeah.
Like, I could fathom being insecure.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy to fathom.
That sounds like a level of hell. I don't want to be arrogant, but being insecure all the time.
So this is
sounds like hell.
saying
It's terrifying.
24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your
There's
it's your resting position.
And here's the sad part.
You can work through it, all of it.
If you're arrogant,
You can work through it?
people don't like you. Okay, that's just the bottom line. People do not like arrogant people. It's very rare.
but you're wildly successful all alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, in this world, arrogance gets you farther.
The fun part
Insecurity, you can have friends.
the fun part about being arrogant is that you actually probably don't care that no one likes you. You're probably such a narcissist that you're like, whatever.
I was going to say,
man.
what's the degree of arrogance here?
Heavy
Yeah, it's
arrogance
heavy.
and heavy
Yeah.
insecurity.
And the heavy insecurity sounds
You're-
like torture.
Okay,
You're
so
going- you're
would
going
you
to be
rather
needy.
be Rick or Morty? That's basically what you're asking.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think Morty's insecure enough for this question.
Earlier in
Oh.
the seasons,
I think,
what?
I don't think it's enough. I think
Later
it's more.
on, his character arc is awesome.
I mean,
But
Rick's one of
earlier-
my heroes anyway. Rick is wonderful.
So
Yeah,
in
you made
that
this a lot
sense,
easier. I was already picking
Yeah.
arrogance.
I
I'm
know,
choosing
but now I
Rick
can pick
every
Rick.
time.
Yeah, I couldn't. That probably says something about us. Just so we're
Unfortunately,
clear.
I'm probably more Morty. But
It's
Oh, jeez.
it probably means we are Rick.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's probably
Right.
the problem.
Just nowhere near as smart. That's all.
Yeah.
Would you rather definitively prove the existence of demons or the existence of aliens?
Oh,
Aliens are demons. That's a recent.
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
recent thing.
Oh no, that's been around for a long time.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I recently heard it.
There you go.
Yeah.
There is. It's not Mona Lisa. It's the. There's a. It's called. They call it the Mona Lisa as a joke. It's a painting similar to Mona Lisa, but it's a man. And in the background,
It's an
there's
alien.
It's from a
looks
similar
like
time
spaceship.
period.
Yeah,
aliens.
yeah, yeah.
And I love it because
Yeah.
I'm like, absolutely.
Or there's hieroglyphics that they've said this
Sure,
is clearly
absolutely.
in the sky.
Yeah. Let's see, aliens or demons.
Definitively prove.
Prove.
Yeah.
I
you have-
can't
you
even
have
prove the existence of God.
got-
No. But this is the thing. Like you caught one.
one or the other. Wait, you've caught
in
one of
me?
the
No, that'd be
Okay.
bad.
one
That's
or
not
the
good.
other in a glass case. They're right there.
Uh-huh.
They're moving. They're interacting.
I'm leaning towards demon.
Yeah. Are you
I'm
kidding
leaning
me?
Towards demon.
Alien, I gotta feed it. I don't know.
Why are you saying demons aren't hungry?
Yeah. What?
They're hungry.
I love that's where your mind went.
That's a dead demon because I didn't think I had to feed it.
Yeah, I did not know it drank water. You guys, demons drink water.
They are parasitic, actually.
anyone
So you're right.
tripping out?
They have to be in either us or they go to the pigs. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd still existence of demons for sure.
I think as demons, I always thought it's always when I like the demon
Chronicle.
stuff. I always think it's a step from God.
That's what I was thinking.
You have a supernatural being.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, so if demons exist,
Yeah.
come on, you can finish it.
It's actually one of my favorite arguments is just the simple existence of evil. You saying that something is evil means there has to be a good.
But then to the degree
And
of the
so it's kind of that
supernatural,
same- yeah,
it's
yeah.
like boom. And then in the same way, it's kind of the argument of like Satanists believe in Satan. It's like, well, in order to believe in Satan, you got to believe in God.
unless you're just a singular being,
Right.
which is goofy too.
Yeah.
When I was younger and first got saved, and I was like thinking about demons and worried about demons, and I'd be scared.
Yeah.
I'd always say out loud, "Show me your face," and I'm scared. I said, because then I'll go from believing in God to knowing there's a God.
Oh,
I
that's
used to say it
funny.
all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you ever
I
see a face?
I have.
Yeah.
Once. It's freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish you could draw because I want to see it.
Yeah.
It was detailed.
It was.
Or is it eyes?
It was a manipulation of my face in a mirror. And I
Oh.
had two
Oh,
people,
yeah, yeah.
I had two people with me, so I told them to look
Yeah.
at it. I always do like,
Yeah.
yeah.
you look at it. Like, so it just kind of manipulated into something else. So pretty terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah, mine was it was a shadowy figure but the eyes were very clear. But it wasn't a like definitive face.
Yeah.
It was literally like a dark shadow.
Yeah.
It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I did
Wow.
not enjoy it.
Well, okay, last one. Would you rather lose all your teeth or lose a hand?
Holy smokes.
Which hand?
Your dominant hand.
Oh, yeah. Why did I
So
ask
my,
that?
my first thought though really was I can get dentures.
That's exactly what I do. I go
Yeah.
teeth because I can get dentures.
Ha-
Losing
hand
a
is-
hand,
I already have lost half my teeth anyway.
There
so.
you go.
man, I definitely go. I go teeth.
If I lost a hand and it was my dominant, that's okay because I could still strum. I could just attach a prosthetic. But the fingering of the guitar would be almost
The
impossible.
advancements in prosthetics is really cool,
Yeah.
but
Still, not your hand.
It's not there.
it's not your hand.
If you get it down to where like my hand moves just like a hand does, like the
Sure, and I don't
bionic-
know. Yeah.
Oh, best example was the new RoboCop when the guy was playing the classical guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
wow. And it was actually accurate.
It's funny. My best example is iRobot because one of his hands ends up being a robot hand. That's like the
yeah.
twist. Spoiler.
Oh, yeah.
That's why he could beat up the
his arm.
robots.
His alarm.
How about
Yeah.
Tesla's new robots? Have you seen them? They're
impressive.
they're actually at the event serving drinks and doing this stuff. Super fun to watch. You're like, yeah, that's a
Okay,
humanoid.
here's my question. How
robot.
did no one just body slam one of those?
So they had guards around them.
I would have
They had people that were kind of
here's-
like,
Like, how
Here's my
fragile is
advice.
it?
If we're gonna build robots, they need to have the same fragility as humans. we cannot have these things we can't defeat.
that's the problem. When you're like, I'll punch it. No, you'll break your hand on a
Yes.
steel head.
Yes.
Like it's very
They
scary.
need to literally be the same fragility as humans. Like a bullet stops someone because we're building these
That would help.
indestructible beings.
Oh, my
That would
gosh.
help.
It's a really bad idea.
I mean, it's-
Waterproof, bulletproof.
It is Terminator. We are literally just kind of playing out.
EMP proof. I don't even know how you do
Yeah.
that. But all right, on that note, thanks for joining us on You Won't Hate It. I'm Josh.
I'm still Ryan and Floyd.
I am Joe, and the EMP is a really and why don't they ever use that in those robot movies?
I don't know.
One
Oh, they
EMP
use them in all the robot movies.
They didn't EMP them in iRobot in the war.
Not an iRobot.
No,
Well, the civilians
you think,
didn't
you
have
think
the
that'd
EMPs.
be easy.
Yeah.
You just EMP them.
It's kind of a cheat
Not
code.
in
though.
iRobot. They didn't. It is a
No.
cheat code. Well, so is the syringe that what?
I'm saying N. It's M.
The nanites.
EMP.
Yeah, electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Joe still.